My name is Anthony Ioppolo, and I'm going to be presenting on my, and by extension your, first red team tool. This is kind of the thought process I went through to trying to take everything into consideration, and you're going to see exactly how I got to apply it to make my first project. So who am I? I'm Anthony. According to Shandy, I'm Threevil Ioppolo. I'm a some-year cybersecurity major. I am your head of research. I'm the senior infra junior 2. I'm kind of red team, I'm a little devious, and believe me, I can tell you all about the terminal. Real. All right, so kind of this quick look into red team versus blue team competitions. The red team, they're the offensive people. They're gonna find exploits, they're gonna make tools and programs to kind of exploit the exploits, and they're gonna be committing these evil acts during the competition. If you have scored services, they're gonna be taking your services down. Blue team, they're the less evil of the two. And they're going to be trying to patch these exploits. They're going to be they're going to make their own blue team defensive tools. They're going to try to find the red team tools and remove them and prevent their services from going down. So these competitions, you're going to be scored on a couple different things, but a lot of the time you have to protect scored services is what they're called. This can be ICMP, this can be DNS, this can be AD, it can be a whole other plethora of things that you have to keep up. You have to be able to threat hunt, and if you're blue, you have to stop red team. If you're red, you have to stop blue team. It's that easy. So I already did my blue teaming. If you're familiar with our red team, you have to have your own 2 blue competitions. You have to make a tool, and then you're ready. So I did my blue teaming. I want to be evil now. So you gotta start brainstorming. So let's think about some of the known services. There's DNS, there's AD, there's ICMP. So ICMP is scored. That's pretty interesting. So my next steps was, okay, if I'm exploiting ICMP, I have to think about how to make my own ICMP packets. People aren't going to be blocking something that's scored generally, unless they're doing something really wrong. So these are almost always going to be able to get through unless there's specific firewall rules. So how do I even do that? Maybe a C2? That could be pretty interesting. And then the most important part, obviously, the name. The name. What could the name be for ICMP? ICMP? No, ICUP. Project is born. That's as quick as brainstorming can go. So what even is an ICMP? In an ICMP field, there's going to be the IP header, the ICMP header, and then ICMP data. So ignoring kind of all of the things that traditionally make it work, because that's not the part we care about. We care about the ICMP data. That's something that's pretty interesting, and I didn't know until I really started this. You can kind of put whatever you want in there. Normally, it'll be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z, and then it'll repeat to like G or something. Kind of just random stuff. But what if we put our own information in there? So it's kind of, you want to sit down, you want to think about exactly what's going on. So as much as I hated UML diagrams, they're actually kind of helpful a little bit of the time, kind of piecing together what you want. But think about what you want to happen. So I want to make an ICMP like custom payload that does stuff. What a C2, a rootkit? C2, it's a big competition. You're going to be able to communicate with all of your agents. And you want to get the basics working. This is kind of the first step in the process. So I said I want to be able to make ICMP packets. I got to make sure the core functionality is working. And luckily for me, this is basically the lines that do that. So I threw this together quick. And you say, okay, Python, run your demo. What do I want the message to be? Oh, that's not good. That's a lot of bad. So what do I want the message to be? Let's just say iCup. You pass in, and literally just 15 lines of code, most of that is like function management. You already can send custom messages, and if you look over here, we already put the word iCup in there, and that was 15 lines. That's really cool, and it was that easy to kind of get that part started. So after that, you want to attack the problem piece by piece. So you're going to have all these functions you want to make, and you kind of just got to say, okay, I need my main function, good. I want the thing that does the stuff, that's cool. How do I integrate with that with the client? And you continue to go down. And please follow actual coding practices. Ashley gave a fantastic talk on how to not make a C2. That's literally exactly half of the issues I ran into when I was first making this, and I would very highly recommend checking that out. So kind of in a rush, do all the work, kind of get basic functionality working, and iCup v1 dropped right in time for IRSec. And honestly, one of the biggest pieces that I ran into was client management, because it was that easy to write the exploit, but what do you do? So, okay, adding clients, that's not that bad. So you have to deal with like adding, removing, you have to be able to sort clients, store them. So that wasn't so bad. It was in Python. It was really easy to do. So you have a bunch of clients. Say I have a Python script that now I can generate a bunch of different clients. But if you look at the way that I do this in the beginning, it's kind of a disaster. I have to go in, I have to hard code this every single time. And then my whole target generation, it's all something that I have to generate every single comp, no matter what. So it's really cool. I can execute things on entire teams. I can execute things on entire clients. But like, it's kind of a disaster. This block of code right here, I wrote it and I have no idea what this is doing. It's kind of a disaster. And again, it's things that you have to hard code. So you saw how easy it was to communicate with ICMP, and Python makes that really easy. So something needs to be able to listen, and Python goes crazy with this again, because you just say, okay, I'm going to start the sniffer, I'm going to look for ICMP data types that are echo replies, and I'm going to start listening. That starts a thread. It's really that easy. And more importantly, the client has to know it's being communicated to. So for my case, I added a specific header. It was exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. The client picks that up, says, oh, that's for me, and then it can send it back. Just that easy. It'll look for packets that are coming in. This is actually the Go version. It'll look for packets coming in. It'll sort by the exclamation points, and it'll do that. And you have to make sure the server knows that the client knows by also storing a server listener with a different unique message so you're not interfering with several clients. So now what does this client look like? So my be evil clause for this, you have to decide what this means for you. If you're doing a rootkit, you're going to want to hide things. If you're doing this, you got to be able to communicate. So part of this was for me. Part of this for me was command execution. So Python, again, super easy. I get my server, I get my command, and I get if it's encrypted or not, and I can just dump that into subprocess. And if it matches a certain criteria, I can just have remote command execution on whatever I want. So also, you want to think about what you're doing for persistence. So your malware shows up, someone says, I don't like that, and they reboot and it's gone. That's a really bad thing. So you want this to be able to persist through reboots and make it a little harder to discover and to remove. So in Windows, you can do this with registry keys. I did it with the service file. So literally, you just specify a service, and then every time you can set this to start on boot. I have a little script that runs and sets it all to boot, so it never goes away, even when you reset. So you have to be sneaky. You can run, or you can't run, but you can hide. So something I did. So if you check the service file, you'll see, oh, it's starting the ICMPD service, which doesn't exist, but it sounds like it could. And then when you cat the file, it's a Python file. I couldn't really hide it very well. So you'd get this really long licensing agreement. Who's going to read the licensing agreement? So that was my genius workaround, but it was still Python. So as much as iCup, Campione di Mundo, greatest in the world, it really wasn't. Because you have to call, Max taught me how to do this, you have to call the interpreter from user bin secret. So when you actually check the service file, it's be like, what are you doing in user bin secret? And someone just looks that up and like, oh, you're hiding stuff there? Gone. The code base was atrocious. It was really not great. And it's kind of all held by one try catch consisting of the entire program. And I've been advised that that's honestly maybe not the best way to work things. So it's time to go on. IRSec, it went pretty well. I had a couple clients by the end, but nothing too great. So Python is nice, but I want to be able to compile this. C is scary. Straight up. Rust? No, that's not going to happen. So Go might work. So now you have to learn a new language. And I thought this was going to be a disaster. I started trying to read all the documentation. I was like, you know what? Pulled them up side by side. I was like, okay, there's going to be show clients in Python. It's just for everyone. Look for it. How do I do this in Go? And then it just pops right up. This is how you're going to look for the range of clients. This is how you're going to be able to sort. This is how you're going to be able to convert them into an integer. And just step by step like this, it actually was pretty easy to learn a new language. So now you have almost basic fluency in it just because you've made something in it. And sometimes it can get pretty head empty when you do some peer programming, perhaps. But at the end of the day, you do want to learn things. So it's ChatGPT, for example, is a valuable tool, but it's not a crutch. Ashley, again, gave another talk on how to do code development with ChatGPT, and I would very, very highly recommend checking that out too. Okay, so unfortunately, sometimes you do have to actually keep learning things, which is really unfortunate. So why don't you go get some new code. Let's check this out. So interfaces in Go. Back when I did this in Python, you start the sniffer, bingo, bango, bongo, everything's working. When you have to do this in Go, you have to bind the interfaces. Okay, that might run into an issue later, but it's that easy. New packet creation, it's a little bit more work. You can't just throw it in Scapy and have it spit out an answer at you. But as long as you can edit this data field with you have to do typecasting with bytes, but say, okay, make my new header, put in the payload, that's done. That's not bad at all. Marshalling, I don't know what that means. Quick Google search, yeah, it means convert it to bytes. It's that easy. So now you got the binary encoding to resolve the IP. It really is so simple. Maps and slices, I don't know what they were before I started this. Now I do know. What? Exactly, you know. Yeah. So you can compile this. Go is very good at this. When you say go build ICMP, the binary, and what you want to build, bingo, bango, bongo, you have your executable. There are some issues where you're compiling this. You might run into issues. I couldn't get this to work on my Windows machine. I didn't have the time to screw with the building variables and things like that, but I threw it on an Ubuntu server. I just built it and it worked by the grace of God. All right, so then iCup v2 came out. We renamed this one iGoP because it was written in Go. And I'm kind of just going to skip over this quick. It was basically just a repeat of v1. Again, I was in a competition rush to get this out there. I had to do a little bit of fiddling. Very cool. But it was just a Go clone. Somewhere in there's a lesson about making your tools better over time. Probably. Okay, and then this is where the magic happened. iGoP v2. This is the header that pops up when you run it. It's absolutely dastardly. Code base is infinitely cleaner, modular, easy to operate, and you could give this to anyone at a red team comp and say, go get them. You can have 4 people do this, and it all works. And there's actually comments in this code a little bit, and there's a little bit of less random print statements. So looking at the code base, cleaned up the code. I had 17 of these, which is bleh. Versus now, okay, I say if the case is send to all, you're not sending or you're not executing, that's fine. Boom, that function takes care of it. So it's a lot more modular. So you can add features pretty quickly. You can just throw in a new function, throw in a new case, and bingo, bango, bongo. So there are a lot of features that come with this already. You can execute to clients, you can execute to teams, you can send them a message, you can send ping and then it'll reply with pong, things like that, just to test if it's working. You can load based on a targets file. You can see what's alive, you can kill the session, you can enable encryption mode, things like that. And I fixed a lot of these fellas, if the byte size is too big, print conductor, we have a problem. Is this redundant? Yes. Am I fixing it? No. The I failed dog and you fell off. And then when Quan outed me with, if not teams is digit, print bruh. Yeah, that one hurt a little bit. That was all fixed, I think. So I improved the client generation a lot with this one too. So now I have a special client generating script that you throw in, okay, say there's all these different teams and there's all these different boxes and services. You can say, okay, I have 1.1, X is the team variable .1. That's fine. Hit enter, start generating new ones, and then you say how many teams, and then it'll just spit out a target file that can then be read by the iCup server. I included my own custom green board because there's actually a process to have the red team green board, but I was I don't know what any of that means, so I just made my own. And for example, this wasn't even a box that was scored. These guys turned off their routers, so it actually did work pretty well when I introduced this one. The headers got a little more specific. So now I have the options that set it apart from other traffic. I have encryption, whether it's executed. If the packet's oversized, it can recursively send it and it'll give an ID. And I have the IP address that's set through, so this can be works through NAT and things that would normally mess up the IP. And then I have a quantum secure encryption and decryption methods. So if you see here, the encryption flag is set. These are the same 2 messages, but this is never going to be cracked. No supercomputer can get that. What is the seed? We're not going to tell you what that is. And there's oversized segment sending, so that's what these last 2 variables are, where if a message is too big, it'll just send more packets and then read those more packets. Okay. Wait, was that really it? Okay. So now you have your red team tool. Awesome. You want to be able to document this so people can actually read it and use it in the future. So when you leave and someone goes, iCup, that's funny, never going to look at that again. You want to be able to consider adding additions, constantly improve it. Even if you're going to move on to another project, you still want something that can be used consistently. Of course, rack up your presentations. That's why you made it. So this can be at Red Team. You can, because people are going to want to make their own tools. People are going to want to hear about what you're doing and get inspiration for themselves. So you want to be able to give them the ideas. You can go to youtube.com/Ritzek and rewatch this presentation and repeat the entire process for yourself. And just pretend it says like first red or second Red Team tool or third Red Team tool and just keep working on it like that. And you can actually use what you've learned. So when I learned like, oh, I can do this with Scapy, I was in web class and he was saying like, yeah, these things you can do custom SYN packets. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I know exactly how to do that. And you can, as much as like, oh, it's Red Team, you can actually apply these things to a lot of different places pretty effectively. And above all, you want to be able to continue to learn and apply what you have learned to being evil again. It's a cycle, truly. So now I do have a little demo, perhaps, of being evil. Okay. I'm going to switch to the little clip-on mic. Hello? There we go. Probably could have thought this through a little more, but it don't matter. Okay, so in the server list, we have our generates target script. So say Python, generate your targets. Okay, just kidding. We're going to do Python 3, generate your targets. There it is. Okay. So I know that this client is, this is one client. Normally this is supposed to be used against a team network, but I say 192.168.4.x. So x is going to be the team variable in this case, even though it's just one client. Just bear with me here. So we're done with that. We're just going to add one machine. We're going to have 200 teams. This IP address is very high, and I didn't have time to change it. Okay. So now we have our targets generation script. So, okay, that's a lot of targets. It doesn't matter. It don't matter. So we're going to go run our server, and we're introduced with this. When we go run our client, oh, would you look at that? The ICMP service has started. You can look at the RFC if you have any questions about ICMP, just in case anyone's looking. So right now we have no clients. But since we generated that script, you can type in load, and now you have a lot of clients. So moving down, you could type in help, see what options are available, and we're gonna want to execute something. We have the clients now. So just to see what's alive right now. I don't know if you can see that. You cannot. Hello? There it is. So we want to see what's alive right now. Check alive. Just sent a message to 200 clients, and now we're going to see one of them is alive. 197. That's awesome. So team 198 has a client open. That's fantastic. So now we can reference it by its client ID. So say we're going to execute on client 197. We're going to echo, I'm going to say test. We're going to echo test. We're not going to echo anything else. We're going to put that into test.txt. So on this client, if I just open another thing, hello. I type very slow. And clients. So right now there's nothing in there. When we echo test into test, there's no response generated because we were just echoing something. And now we effectively have remote code execution on like so many clients. So you could get a little dastardly with this. I can't do anything interactive, so if you tried to open up an SSH session, it would kind of not be very happy with that. But I found out the error messages it generates, like it works throughout that, and that might have just been having a bunch of try catches in there. Sometimes it works, who knows? But you really can do kind of anything a one-liner basically could. But yeah. So when you think about seeing with ICMP, think about ICUP, and that's real. Questions? I saw you first.
So if you go back to the slides, you talked about how you have encryption and decryption. into the compiler, so you can have a different one on startup, and you just use like the system clock or something like that?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
So the question was if I've thought about using Go compiling arguments to change up the encryption process. And I have thought about that a little bit. Quantum secure is kind of a loose term in my in my code. But I have actually thought about that. It is relatively simple. The idea is nobody's going to really try to crack your messages over the wire during a competition. But I have thought about kind of changing that.
And then another thing on that, so ICMP, like you were saying earlier, usually the data section just has like the A through Z stuff. So when you actually see like, encrypted packets on that, I feel like that's actually more suspicious.
Yeah.
Have you found that like that's one of the limitations with this protocol for red teaming? Because like, say you're using something like HTTP or HTTPS or even like DNS or like DNSSEC now, it's more common to see other forms of like data in the actual like, packets.
Yeah.
Is that something you thought about?
So the question was, have I thought about using a protocol that can have random data versus ICMP, which should have something more rigid? And to be honest, when I first made this, I was in a time crunch. I was like, okay, I need to make something, and this is what I came up with. I have thought about that, but a lot of my rationales come down to competitions are stressful. So as much as it would be awesome to have something that like, okay, this is random data that might make sense, sure, versus like this is definitely wrong data. Some of the issues with that have been, I wouldn't say resolved, but you have to find the client to get rid of it. You can't block the server because it's connectionless. So the client's not connecting to a server. I can have as many servers as I want as long as I have the client IPs. They can all connect to the same place. So it comes down to finding the implant at that point, and that comes down to my persistence mechanism, which at this point is a little weak. But in the future, like having something with real persistence that say you get rid of it, and even possible tools in the future, perhaps, of an undisclosed name and origin, that help protect my applications, I think for this use case, it would be viable. But it would be nice to have something like HTTPS.
How are you managing your clients? There's a lot of clients in the competition, so how are you storing all of them?
Yeah, so right now, I'm storing all my clients. It's like a non-persistent memory of, it's just putting them in a map or a slice, one of the two. And yeah, that could be a big deal, like, oh, if you're spinning up different things. But once you have the target generation file set up, you just have to hop into the server again, type in load, and then it'll immediately load everything. And then you can remove them as you need to, so it won't be generating unnecessary traffic, things like that.
Two more things. So for the generating targets, I noticed that was a like script that you made on yourself. Have you looked at any like prior art, such as like Micah D. Martin stuff that you use for like phone board for like generating client lists with like JSON and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't know about that until I looked at the Frontier docs. It's not like publicized at all, but yeah.
So the question was, have I considered using already existing tools and for client generation? And again, no. I was like, I have a problem. I need to fix it. I have like a week. And now that I have more time, that is something that I would consider, especially because I would like to have this integrated with Pwnboard. This tool isn't exactly as unique as I thought it was when I first invented it. Actually, I would say it was unique at the time, but there are equal, if not better, options also that exist. So kind of looking at them and being able to integrate that with Pwnboard versus, honestly, I could keep this as like, oh, this is your first red team exercise. This thing is all self-contained. It's fine. So that's just I have to figure out what I want with this.
If you wanted to read the docs somewhere, it would be fine.
The docs for iCup, they're a little secret right now. They might be coming out in the future, but little obscurity helps my security. My encryption key is a real secret, if you know this. Stop laughing. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? That's all?
I'm not going right now.
Okay.
Were you inspired by anything for the name, or just like, come to you in a dream or something?
So
I'm curious to know.
the question was, did this come to me in a dream? And I've actually had a lot of good ideas come from dreams. That's true.
I think it's on par with the naming
Yeah.
convention of a lot of other red team tools.
Yeah, so our red team has some interesting tool names. I've actually come up with way worse ones, like criminally worse. Which I will not be taking any questions or comments at this time, too.
Maybe they should stick in your dreams.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we'll keep that quiet. But no, for the most part, honestly, it was literally just the ICMP, ICUP epiphany that I had just because I thought it was funny, and will probably regret like linking this to anyone who may be employing me in the future. But I thought it was really funny.